So a couple of weeks ago, my wife Amber did a video on a spiritual lesson from the movie Hook. If you haven't seen it yet, I'll link to it below so that way you guys can go check that out. Great video, great lesson that she shares, and I wanted to share another particular lesson from that video, or from that movie. It was funny because we were sitting there, we were getting ready to watch the movie, and we both at the same time were like, oh, there's such a cool spiritual lesson here. And so we kind of picked out these different things, and so this was something that we were going to tag team and just kind of go after both from two different angles. So before I get started, I just want to say that I personally think Hook is the greatest rendition of Peter Pan that has ever been made. I don't think anybody will ever beat Robin Williams' portrayal of Peter Pan and that story, and that particular rendition and style was just awesome. I personally don't think it'll ever be outdone. So with that said, I just want to say Bangarang Peter. And so I want to kind of pull from that movie and look at the aspect of childlike faith. And so before we get started, I want to look at Matthew 18 because it ties into this movie in such a powerful way. Jesus says, Matthew 18:1, he says, "At that time the disciples came to Jesus and said, 'Who then is greatest in the kingdom of heaven?' And he called a child to himself and set him before him, and said, 'Truly I say to you, unless you are converted and become like children, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever then humbles himself as this child, he is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever receives one such child in my name receives me. But whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to stumble, it would be better for him to have a heavy millstone hung around his neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea.'" So, Jesus is talking about converting back into being a child and having a childlike faith. And when we look at Hook, I love the idea that Robin Williams, well, really the imagery that Robin Williams portrays in that video and in the movie, because he is this grown adult who has, like, I'm just gonna say it, he's got a stick up his butt. He's rude to his kids. He's just so stressed out and frazzled by work that he's completely lost what it means to be a child. And so he gets back to Neverland after his kids are taken, and he's going through this whole process of trying to figure out how to fight again, how to have an imagination, how to be a kid again, because he's got to fight Hook in a few days to get his kids back. I recently read this article that NASA hired this guy named George Land, Dr. George Land, and he did a study on 1,600 children between the ages of 4 to 5. And basically what he learned is that we're all creative geniuses whenever we're kids. 98% of these 4 to 5-year-olds were creative geniuses. And then in 5 years, they retested them. And guess what? 30% were only considered creative geniuses. And then they tested them at 15 years. And guess what? Only 12% of those that they tested were considered a creative genius. Basically, what they were finding out was that the school system and institutionalization was basically making people dumber, because we have two different styles of thinking, divergent thinking and convergent thinking. Our convergent thinking is more of our reasoning and critical thinking skills and evaluating and criticizing that kind of thinking. I know I'm going to butcher the whole thing. The article gets into the science of it, but I'll link to that down below. So the divergent thinking is more that creative thinking and that creative imagination. And Jesus had this scientific understanding. Imagine that, God having scientific understanding. I mean, imagine that. He made us. It's like he kind of knows what he's talking about. But anyways, Jesus had this understanding of the way our brains work and the way our imagination and our creativity and our faith works as children thousands of years before science discovers this reality. And in the article, they talk about that, if you think that, this is just like an isolated incident of the few kids that they studied, no, it's been replicated millions of times. And so their study is legit, and it was actually a TED Talk that's in the article. So you can see that video whenever you check out the article. But so with all of that said, let's go back to Peter Pan. I love the scene where they're at the dinner table and they are having dinner, and all of the Lost Boys are just chowing down on food. And I love the little black boy whenever he is getting ready to eat. And he's got this giant sandwich, and you just see him like trying to fit his mouth around this sandwich. And Robin Williams is just like, his mouth is salivating because he knows it's there because that little boy sees it in reality, but Robin Williams can't see it yet. And then all of a sudden you see it snap and it clicks, and Robin Williams starts seeing the food whenever the potatoes, I guess their potatoes are colored or whatever they are, gets flung, and it smacks him in the face and smacks the other guy in the face, and they're playing, and they're having this giant food fight. But just before that, he was still an adult. He was still just stuck and dumbed by being an adult and by being a grown-up and being in the institution for too long. And I'm not bashing at any institution, but what I want to express that Jesus tells us about in Matthew 18, that we have to be like Peter Pan. We are Peter Banning, and we are too grown up, and some of us have gotten a stick up our butt about our doctrines, our dogmas, our education, our thinking, that we've got it all figured out. But Jesus tells us in Matthew 18 that we have to convert and go backwards. It's like he takes everything and flips it upside down. In Jesus' time, children were like dogs. I mean, they were just kind of scattered away. And even, I can't remember where it's at, but the disciples are like trying to shoo the kids away because they're just annoying pests. And Jesus says, no, let them come to me. I love these kids. And so Jesus wants us to convert back to being a child, because he knows that the way our brain works, that our faith is based out of our imagination, and that we can imagine God doing the impossible, and our imagination sees and has faith in what God can do. And so looking at Peter Pan and Peter Banning and the movie Hook, guys, we have to stop getting stuck. Let me be careful how I word this, because it's good to read, it's good to stick our nose in a book, but don't let book knowledge, don't let frontal lobe knowledge, don't let convergent thinking stifle your divergent thinking. Don't let it stifle. Don't let your education, don't let your being stuck in a routine of a job and the stress of work, of life, stifle your imagination and your childlike faith. Jesus wants us to convert back to being a child. I love when they're in the airplane and his son is sitting there tossing the ball, and then the oxygen masks come down. He's like, grow up! And he's like, I don't know how. And I saw a cartoon the other day that said, why don't you act your age? And the next line was, I don't know, I've never been this age before. And so No, don't grow up. Grow down. Get more immature. Get more childlike. Because when we are children, when we are those 4 to 5 year olds, we have a creative imagination about us that is able to envision and have faith, childlike faith for the impossible, for what God is doing. We're able to imagine what God could do if we stopped looking for Him to do it the way a textbook tells us, or the way a tradition tells us, or the way that we've always seen it. So we have to convert and go back to being a child. We have to grow down instead of growing up. We have to go backwards. It's the paradox of discipleship that as we get older, we actually have to get younger. Len Sweet calls this, let me make sure I'm going to say this right, simplification, or no. I think that, yeah, simplification or complexification. I can't remember, but it's complexity and simplifying together. And he's talking about our theology gets more complex, but our faith has to get simpler and simpler. And that's one thing I love about this doctoral program is that Dr. Leonard Sweet is the man. I mean, he has caused my mind and my imagination to just go bananas. And so it's been a great experience. And I hope to keep kind of doing these things. And so, man, next time you watch Hook, if you haven't watched Hook, sit down, watch it with your kids. Hands down, greatest rendition of the Peter Pan story that you will ever watch. I would love to hear your thoughts. Is there any other spiritual lessons that you have picked up from the movie Hook? Let me know. Put it in a comment below. But guys, let's not get more complex in our faith. Let's not let our faith and our thinking muddy up the waters. It's I mean, according to NASA, it's making us dumber. So let's simplify our faith. Let's go backwards. Let's start being children again. All right, guys, I love you. Have a great day. Be a kid today. Peace.